one thing is for sure when all this is over. Nothing, not in politics, not in health, not in economics, is ever going to be the same again.
Well, the number one thing that's been quarantined in the United States is the Constitution itself. Yep. Right now, we have, you go back and look at the Japanese internment camps during World War II, where the United States locked up hundreds of thousands of Americans of Japanese ancestry. And we always wonder, how did that happen? Well, right now, about 200 million Americans are under house detention and house arrest. They do not have a First Amendment right to public protest anymore. They do not have a right of First Amendment public association. They don't even have a right to go to church. If they do, they could be arrested in 2/3 of where the population resides in this country. The Second Amendment is now being suspended effectively by gun shops being closed down. The Fourth Amendment is now effectively being suspended as both medical privacy and privacy rights are being invaded routinely and regularly. And the Fifth Amendment is completely gone as people's property is being taken away without any form of meaningful compensation and any due process of law. You look at other countries, traditionally the American Constitution requires individualized suspicion. So it's analogous to what Russia is doing. There has to be a reason to believe that person carries the virus to take any remedial action against that individual. Now we just presume guilt of over 200 million Americans. And there's no question that this is a power grab. It's a power grab done disproportionately, unfortunately, by Democrats in the sense of these were supposed to be our civil liberties protectors. Instead, the ACLU is mostly busy focused on how we can release more inmates from Rikers Island, rather than how can we protect Americans from being imprisoned in their own home and deprived of their core rights. And there's no question that it's politicized. The goal is to take out President Trump. The press has pushed panic, 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 panic. This pandemic will probably turn out more panic than plague when we're done with the stats. Just today, over 3 million Americans filed for unemployment claims, according to the report this morning. A record, and not only a record, 5 times higher than any unemployment report ever for a weekly time period. And then that number is only going to grow. It's likely to be 10 million within a month unless we substantially reverse course. So there's no question that this is a power grab. It turns out that all the political elites who wanted a deep state apparatus that wanted to say terrorism should scare you into giving away your rights, crime should scare you into giving away your rights. It turned out they had the wrong message. Just scream scary virus, and all of a sudden half of the left will give away their rights. We'll have mass unemployment, mass deprivation of civil liberties. That's what's happening in America today. Totally unprecedented, totally unparalleled, like something out of a conspiracy theory film.
You know, Daniel, one of the things that we can go back to the events of 9/11 and the Patriot Act and it's being updated and enforced. I mean, this is one very long, slippery slope because, there and Robert went through all of the different cases using the amendments of the Constitution. When do we get it back? There's no indication they're going to give it back, okay? That's what's really terrifying to me because what they're doing is creating a new normal, which is not normal at all, okay? But they are giving us the perception that we must obey, which I think it's really quite remarkable how willing people obey these things. I mean, this is what we're saying right now for our audience is rarely heard, actually, on any airwave right now. But this is just quite obvious. We have laws and we have institutions that we need to protect because they're supposed to protect us, okay? So, I mean, the slippery slope, address that issue. Can we, nobody said this is for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. I mean, or what, are they implying it's going to be renewed every 3 months, every 6 months until they forget to renew it? Go ahead.
Well, even the president's own advisor, over the president's own words, said, well, it'll be weeks and months, probably not years. So, as Bob Higgs wrote in the famous Crisis in Leviathan, the ratchet, when there's a crisis, the government grabs power, it ratchets more power. It never ratchets back when the crisis is done. You captured it perfectly in your introduction, Peter. While everyone was terrified of a flu virus, we renewed the Patriot Act for the umpteenth time. We let the government spy on us for the umpteenth time. Remember back in 9/11, after 9/11, they said, oh, this is our temporary measure. Don't worry. As soon as we deal with this immediate crisis, you'll get all your rights back, your freedoms back. That's not going to happen. It didn't happen. It's not going to happen this time. And as you point out, what's utterly devastating is how willingly Americans have walked with their heads down to the slaughter of the Constitution and their own slaughter of their civil liberties. People actually seem to be reveling in it. You know, do we lead such humdrum lives that a little bit of excitement is worth destroying the entire economy? As you pointed out, churches are closed. You know, I mentioned on our program yesterday, a 29-year-old county attorney for Harris County down here in Texas, she got in front of the television and said, I'm shutting down the 4th largest city in the United States, Houston, Texas, shut down. You can't go to work. You can't go out to eat. You can't do anything. How on earth can so much power be concentrated in the hands of one extremely minor official? A 29-year-old county attorney in Harris County shuts down the 4th largest city in the United States. Something is bizarre, by the way, as we know, very progressive, very left-wing Houston and Harris County in their politics. So you're seeing a lot of that, but it's terrifying.
It is terrifying. You know, Robert, the thing is that I find myself in a real quandary because my first issue that I'm thinking about in looking at this crisis is working people and working families. Okay, I don't care about these billionaires. They're annoying to me. They're gimme, gimme, gimme all the time. It's 2008 all over again, and nothing was fixed. Okay, fine, we can set that aside, and it should be separate. The quote-unquote bailout should be separate. We should be working with families here. But the quandary for me is that I don't like seeing dependence on the government, and this is exactly what they're doing. You become more and more dependent, direct aid. Now, and for me, it's tough because these people need to pay their rent, okay? They need to pay their bills. I get that, okay? I understand them far better than the media does, than anyone in Washington, okay? But at the same time, this is another lever where they can grab even more power and create more dependency. That is a recipe for disaster. Go ahead, Robert.
Exactly. As the old joke goes, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program. And that is precisely the case here. They're seeing this as a test opportunity to see how much power they can seize without effective resistance or dissidence. And not only that, you take it a step further. For example, right now, the way you do political association or religious association is usually in person at meetings or places. Now you can't do that. Instead, the only way you can politically associate or affiliate or express your religious beliefs effectively is over mechanisms and methods that can be surveilled, spied on, and gathered. So that's how there's an incorporation of the reauthorization of the Patriot Act and the FISA provisions with what's happening right now. Right now, they can monitor and record everyone's political activities because now the only way you can associate and affiliate politically is over the internet, is over the phone, is over some manner that they can gather, and we know they're gathering. They've been doing it routinely and regularly. As Edward Snowden, of course, blew the whistle on many years ago. So the precedents that they're setting, that's one problematic set. The second problematic set is that no one's paying attention in great detail in the press to what the Fed is doing. The Fed is committing as much as $1 trillion a day to be available on the market. They're talking about putting as much on their balance sheet, quadruple, quintuple what they put on in all of the 2008-2009 scandal. They could buy up. They're now openly admitting they're going to directly buy stocks, directly buy bonds, directly buy everything. And so you could have the Fed actually effectively own the country to a certain degree.
And who controls the Fed? No one. They control themselves. No accountability at all. You know, let me go to Daniel. Let's keep on this point here. You know, it really just kind of dovetail off what Robert had to say here. But we have private corporations in Silicon Valley that are doing this, the censorship, filtering everything, filtering messages. I know a lot of people, political people on left and right on YouTube, demonetizing them, even having their videos taken down because the algorithm picks up coronavirus. I know people that have to come up with code words so it doesn't get taken down because the algorithm, because there's so many people talking about it obviously online that you can't have an army of people do it, so you have technology do it. I mean, I find it even more everything we've been talking about terrifies me, but we have corporations that are in league with big government and both political parties, and I would even throw in the deep state here. This is strangulating us. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, here's a good example. Last week, Dr. Paul wrote his weekly column. He titled it "The Coronavirus Hoax." if you read the article, it says this virus is very real. There are people that are susceptible and they should take care of themselves. They should protect themselves. He went on to talk about the actual hoax being the reaction in the media, in the government, in the power grabbers, and trying to use this for their own methods. And he singled out, excuse me, Anthony Fauci of the Centers for Disease Control, wherever he's at, it's been there since the 60s, who said, this is 10 times more deadly than the regular flu. And he had a comment in there saying there's really no basis for that, because very early on, there was no testing at the time he said it. And so up comes PolitiFact organization. We are going to fact check Ron Paul for saying this. We've determined that Fauci is a great guy and Ron Paul is a conspiracy theorist. Therefore, Fauci's right and Paul is wrong. Well, guess what? A couple of weeks later, what are the numbers doing? They're adjusting the death rate down, down, down. And so I looked into PolitiFact. I wrote a little article about PolitiFact. Guess who funds them? George Soros and the Koch Foundation. These are the people who want to strangle any dialogue here in the U.S. They have their fingers on the levers. And this is what happens. They're also funded by the United States government. So this is what's happening. So anytime you looked at Dr. Paul's column on Facebook, it's whited out. It says this is fake news.
I saw it.
So this is what happens.
Well, they did it. They did it to me too, as well. Okay, for saying something that the mainstream doesn't find acceptable. Okay, the guardians at the gate here. You know, Robert. One of the interesting thing is that there's not even people are not even aware of the sophisticated message that they're being fed here. And I find that really disturbing because unfortunately part of my job is to watch CNN and MSNBC, and to some degree Fox. I think Fox dropped the ball in the beginning too, did not understand how to pivot. Okay, but if you're thinking about pivoting, then you're in trouble because that's not giving news to the public here. And again, it's over politicized here. And I find it really disturbing that there's so many people that feel so powerless right now. And on top of it, what I think is truly disgusting is that this is a money grab by major corporations. Okay, this is their opportunity to clean up their balance sheet. Okay, or to be able to buy more of their own stock and stuff like that. It's so transparent. I mean, the Nancy Pelosi's bill is. I mean, it was wokeism. I thought we were dealing with a pandemic. It was also all about wokeism here. This is opportunism at its worst. Go ahead, Robert.
No doubt. And to give it a sense of the big tech censorship and how it's escalating in this context, there's this little nerd from Silicon Valley who just put together the data using WHO reports, using Stanford epidemiology reports, using other doctor reports and Israeli Nobel laureate winners reports, who just pointed out that a lot of the pandemic talk was more panic than plague, that there are manageable ways to treat it. Well, and he just put it up on his Medium page. He's not a political guy at all. The post went viral because people were shocked to see this dissident information they had not seen from the mainstream press. What happened within a day, Medium had taken down his article. Zero Hedge ran it, and Twitter put up a warning that said, if you look at this, this is fake news that might actually steal your data and information. They libeled the guy. Well, now we're escalating it. The Department of Justice has asked permission to detain people without probable cause of a crime or whether they're clear danger to any person. And then they escalated it again yesterday, saying they're going to start using the true threats exception of the First Amendment to prosecute people they consider doing terroristic threats about the virus. Well, what that could ultimately mean is they could include in that people spreading information that they consider misinformation as being a danger to people's public health and thus a terroristic threat and thus outside First Amendment protections. So it starts with Twitter and Medium not allowing someone's post to be seen or seen under defamatory purposes, and now escalates to the Justice Department, you being subject to potential criminal exposure if you merely question or challenge the established narrative. That's where we're going in this country. They will do everything possible. They will not only quarantine the Constitution, if they get away with it, they'll kill the Constitution.
You know, Daniel, how do we push back? Other than what we're trying to do right now, how do we push back?
Well, I mean, you probably had the same feeling after 9/11. I did as well, you know, and I've had people say we need to file a class action lawsuit. You know, in my own county where my church is, and I happen to belong to a religion where you have to physically be there at church. You can't stream it online to fulfill your Sunday obligation. And so we have been locked down. They said you can't go. You go to 6 months in jail if you go to church. So one of the suggestions was a class action suit, but we are in the atmosphere of the post 9/11. It's actually post 9/11 on steroids now, because we're not all potentially victims of a terrorist attack. This is a brilliant psyop in a way, because we are all potentially victims of this microscopic, invisible bug that can go anywhere. So it is kind of a psyop. It induces panic. Look at people buying toilet paper, years worth of toilet paper. It's one thing we all use, right? That's very interesting. It makes you wonder about people like Gene Sharp and how they put together, sort of mass protests. But as to how we can fight back, someone talked about a class action suit against the county for not letting us exercise our First Amendment. And I had to push back, saying in the atmosphere right now of hysteria, we're not going to get any traction at all. So I think the best we can do is what the two of you gentlemen are doing, and what we try to do every day, as long as we can stay online, is to not question the essential aspects of this. There is a flu virus out there that can be deadly. Look what it does. Look who dies. Look what kinds of people die. It's pretty serious. If you're in that category, you should take it seriously. However, there are a lot of other things. There, as we've pointed out this entire program, the two of you better than I, there are goodies in this for everyone. The military-industrial complex, the corporate thieves, the government power grabbers, the Justice Department, the snoops. This is Christmas in March for all of these people, and it's frightening.
Well, it's not only are these trends continuing, and we've been chronicling them, but we add to this, we have the middle class being crushed again. And I was just thinking about, think about millennials involved in the political process. 9/11, 2008, the Great Recession, and now this. I mean, what role does the political process play for them when you keep getting knocked down over and over again? What I really worry about is that people will give up on the democratic process, and maybe this has already happened, because I don't want to be extremist here, but I mean, there are conventions ahead, there's a general election ahead. Will they happen? And then that is really the last nail in it all here. I mean, they've taken everything away from us except for the vote, and now that seems to be, in play right now. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. I am looking with a group of lawyers to take legal action all across the country. Daniel's right. The hard part is going to get the courts to open up to it, to listen to it in this environment and atmosphere. There's a sad and unfortunate history of courts being closed to these kind of issues during crises. Right. That's how Korematsu decision got issued, that okay Japanese internment camps without individualized suspicion. But that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to say, now we're in that same moment. Do you want to be the judge who becomes the judge who signs the next Korematsu decision, or do you want to be the judge that stands up to that and force the judiciary to either follow in the steps of Korematsu or prove that they were committed to true civil liberties by protecting these civil liberties now? So we're going to bring actions for First, Second, Fourth Amendment, all the Fifth Amendment, all across the country in federal civil rights cases from Connecticut to Texas to California. The second thing is, you're absolutely right about economically. Look what's happening. Like California announced a forbearance on mortgages and maybe equivalent forbearances for rents, but all that does is add to the debt. And you look particularly at of those people, you look at the millennials who are already saddled with massive debt from student debt that was unjustified to be supported by any free market system. Wouldn't have imposed that debt on them, because it would have told them that wasn't worth the expense that they were incurring just to have extra college administrators and running around and to do feminist studies and what have you. The same dynamic, but now they're going to double and triple that debt. So they're going to say, hey, for 3 months you don't have a job, you don't have a wage, but don't worry, you don't have to pay that rent or mortgage. It's just going to add up with interest charges when you come back, so you owed more debt than when you started with, which is exactly what we did in the whole subprime mortgage crisis. The banks ended up walking clear. Ordinary homeowners ended up either foreclosed upon or owing even more money than they otherwise should have had the system been proper.
Or on the street.
Exactly, or totally on the street. And you're going to, I mean, right now, the amazing our ability to suddenly care for the homeless under these circumstances. It's intriguing to watch. But the homeless were clearly a high-risk community for this particular kind of virus, and to spread the virus when not taken care of. But the threat to ordinary people's economic well-being, most people only have 1 week's savings. They do not have 3 month savings, and we're going to give them $1,200. That's not going to that will last a week or two. Not only that, it does money market theory, does monetary MMT, monetary money theory, really work when it's not going to increase supply because half the economy is shut down. I mean, despite it's already a controversial economic theory to begin with, now it doesn't even work in its actual terms of its own theory. So we could be dealing with a hyper in Zimbabwe-style inflation if our only solution is to print cash to this. So we could have economic collapse, constitutional collapse. We are at the precipice in a way that this country, frankly, has never been before.
Okay, I'm going to ask Daniel our last question before we close it out here. The United States spends a lot of money on foreign aid, but why don't we have foreign aid for Americans? Okay, I mean, I'm really at a loss. Okay, the United States protects the borders of other countries around the world, but it won't protect its own border. It gives money lavishly around the world, but it's really, really stingy when it comes to its own people. Last answer goes to you, Daniel. Go ahead.
A friend of mine went to the magic calculator to find out how much free money she's going to get from the government based on this, and boom, it happens that she's not getting any because, as she put it, and she put it very well, I make a little more than 100,000, but a lot less than Boeing. So in that huge space in between, you get no free money, you get no free nothing, you get put out of work. So this is what's going to happen. Americans are going to wake up with the biggest hangover in history when this is over.
Yep. I mean, there's a couple of metaphors I could use right now, but it wouldn't be appropriate for this broadcast here. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much.